A marine oil spill is an event, not a process, and it usually has an identifiable and highly visible source. Typically, it has an impact on people on board ship and on shore, an impact on the environment, and a cost which can run, even for small spills, to millions of dollars, or right up to billions of dollars for very large incidents. What is more, a spill of any size can quickly become a very high-profile incident and involve permanent damage to a company's reputation. Over the last 50 years, there have been a number of high-profile incidents, and the names of many of the vessels and companies involved are well known even among the general public. However, those years have also seen continuing efforts to reduce both the number of incidents of marine oil pollution and the overall amount of oil lost. Legislation covering everything from the way vessels are designed and built to the way they are operated has been an important part of the ongoing success of these efforts. For most countries, the key piece of legislation is the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, more commonly known as MARPOL. But in United States waters, it's the 1990 Oil Pollution Act, normally known as OPA 90 for short, which governs releases of oil. The response to any spillage of oil, whether it is petroleum, animal or vegetable oil in US waters, will be governed by OPA 90. It applies to all vessels, both tankers and non-tankers entering the United States, whatever their flag. As well as this, some US states have even more rigorous requirements than those found in OPA 90. Although in other jurisdictions around the world it's usually governments that take responsibility for any cleanup, in US waters the situation is different. Under OPA 90, the responsibility for the cleanup lies with the organisation which either spilled the oil or is taking responsibility for the consequences of the spill.
Yes, Captain Umesh.
This organisation is known as the responsible party. OPA 90 dictates that even if a spill may be regarded as an accident, it is still considered a crime. This means that any individual, including all seafarers and company employees, or any organisation, could face a criminal prosecution under OPA 90 for their actions or their failure to act in relation to instances of oil pollution. They could also face action in the civil courts. In United States waters, the consequences of an oil spill can be enormous on many fronts. Damage to the environment can be extensive. The costs of any response and cleanup can be significant. And the impact on individuals and the organisations for which they work can be severe. But the primary purpose of legislation in this area is to prevent oil pollution. So, in this programme, we will be looking in detail at what OPA 90 means for the prevention, preparedness and response to oil spills from ships in US waters. The OPA 90 Vessel Response Plan, or VRP, will be consistent with the ship's MARPOL SOPEP, but it will also contain additional information on the US-based organisations and individuals that are named in it. The plan is complex and does need study. Like the SOPEP, a VRP is an integral part of the ship's SMS. All ships, including tankers and non-tankers, must have one. The level of response capability needed on board will vary depending on the type of ship. The VRP will always be in English, with copies available in the working language of the crew if this is not English. It will contain information in 10 different categories, which are detailed in the workbook that accompanies this programme.
Into the space was little bit.
However, no plan or level of preparedness, no matter how good, will be any use in an emergency unless everyone on board is familiar with their role and has taken part in drills.
Finally, everything will be okay.
OPA 90 regulations set out the frequency and type of these drills. Some are self-evaluated and self-certified and can therefore be specific to a particular ship. A ship may also be ordered to participate in exercises by the US Coast Guard captain of the port without any prior warning. Most companies will participate in the Preparedness for Response Exercise Program, or PREP for short.
So the scenario, or shall we say the topic for
a program which fulfills OPA 90 requirements relating to exercises. Under the PREP guidelines, exercises must be carried out quarterly. Some of these may be confined to the ship, but once a year there must be a full-scale exercise to test both the ship and shore-based emergency response capabilities. In this response exercise, the subject is a simulated spill which has occurred as a result of a collision with a barge during a lightering operation. As well as key personnel on board the ship, this particular scenario involves an emergency response team at company headquarters and a unified command set up at the scene of the spill. At the agreed time, the master starts the exercise. He begins by informing the barge and then sounds the general emergency signal, which gets everyone working to assist him.
I repeat, all pollution drill for exercise purposes only. Thank you.
Once he has assessed the situation, the master must rapidly make a series of notifications. Under OPA 90, the first notification must be the National Response Center, or NRC, in Washington, D.C.
Hello, is that the USCG National Response Center? Good day to you. This is the master of the tanker Volomi Tanana.
This must be done by telephone if possible, even before calling the company's head office. The NRC will usually notify the nearest Coast Guard captain of the port, although the responsibility to do so remains with the responsible party.
Possibly a hole just underneath the waterline.
For shipboard spills, the responsible party will generally be the ship's operator or owner.
All members present, no casualty. Thank you.
The next to be informed is the vessel's qualified individual, or QI,
Okay, very well, sir.
who must be resident in the US and available 24 hours a day.
Okay.
Captain Mopedi speaking.
Good morning, this is Captain Seti from the tanker Volomi Tanana.
Most companies employ a specialist contractor as their QI, but it could also be one of their own trained ship's managers, or a specialist from their head office. The QI initiates the initial response and has the power to authorize funds for the cleanup. He or she will make the first call to the Coast Guard's local office and then establish the command centre at the scene of the spill. By now, the ship's main response team has mustered and is starting to deal with the incident. The QI will need honest and reliable information about what is happening on the ship in order to activate the available resources to minimise the effects of the spill. It is important to avoid underestimating the size of any spill, as this could result in compromising the response, as well as having a negative impact on the reputation of the ship's owners and managers, and also its master and crew.
Yes, I would request that if you could get in touch with the agents, the P&I Club.
Once his initial work is completed, the QI may travel to the command centre to join the spill response team. He may remain responsible for the company's spill response, but in this case, the QI will transfer that responsibility to an on-scene incident coordinator, remaining on hand if needed. At the ship's operator's headquarters, the emergency response team will manage the response until such time as the key personnel involved in coordinating the cleanup have reached the command centre. After that, the head office team will remain on hand to give advice and support. The Coast Guard captain of the port is the designated Federal On-Scene Coordinator, or FOSC.
Good afternoon, Captain Venture.
Once he has been notified, he may also travel to the command centre himself, or he may send a representative to act as the FOSC.
Very well.
The Coast Guard will have their own list of people to notify, including environmental organisations and others as they judge appropriate. It is likely that the captain of the port will send someone to be the FOSC representative on board the ship. This FOSC rep will get to the ship quickly by whatever means necessary. Once on board, this officer will work with whoever has the responsibility for liaison between the ship and the command centre. At this stage, all of the key players are now in place. It is worth knowing that many of these actions will have been pre-arranged and approved in line with the National Unified Planning process. And in this kind of scenario, lots of events and actions will take place more or less at the same time. And the whole point of exercises like this is to allow all parties to make sure systems work quickly and effectively.
That was the QI notification we just completed.
On the ship, the process of notification continues. With the NRC and head office informed, the master can delegate any further notifications listed in the plan.
Yes, we've had a collision with the barge.
Conversations need to be clear, concise, and as brief as possible. The master should remain on the bridge to supervise all activities on the ship.
Possibly a hole just underneath the waterline.
The ship's response teams now have a better idea of the extent of the damage to the hull and the amount of cargo that has leaked. The barge is relatively unscathed. There are no injuries on board and no visible rupturing of the empty tanks. Although there is no fire, a team stand by with firefighting equipment because in any pollution incident, the risk of fire is ever present. All tanks, both cargo and ballast tanks, especially those near the collision area, will need to be regularly ullaged to determine the extent of any damage and oil loss to the sea. In the engine control room, the officers are checking that there has been no damage to any equipment. The personnel who will now take over the management of the response are assembling at the command centre, which has been set up as close to the scene of the spill as possible. It is the nerve centre of the operation where all activities associated with the spill response are coordinated. Along with the responsible party represented by the QI or his representative and the state, other people present will include contractors who are or may need to become involved with various aspects of the cleanup, such as experts in salvage and marine firefighting and oil spill removal. Environmental and other government organisations are also represented, and in some areas of the US, there may also be representation from Native Americans or local tribal interests. The ship's agent, cargo owners and the P&I Club may also participate. The objective is a pooling of expertise and a shared approach to reduce the impact of the spill. Although the precise structure may vary between companies, it is likely that the command centre will operate in clearly defined sections. The planning section will coordinate and distribute information concerning the actual and forecast condition of the spill, along with information on the status of resources. The section will also coordinate the preparation of the incident action plans. Operations is responsible for the management of all tactical operations required to execute the company's general emergency response plan. This will include supervising the clean-up operation carried out by the designated oil spill removal organisation. The resources available will most likely include the traditional means of mechanical recovery, namely boom and skimmers, onboard marine platforms, as well as in-situ burn and dispersants. However, which of these are used will depend on how far from shore the release of oil occurred and obtaining approval from the FOSC. Remote sensing technologies using infrared and other imaging systems may also be used to help detect and classify recoverable oil on the water's surface. If safety considerations permit, such technologies can also extend the time that recovery operations are able to continue. Members of the logistics section have the task of obtaining manpower, equipment, material, food, protective clothing and other facilities needed to support the emergency response. As well as settling compensation claims, the finance section is responsible for all the accounting and cost analysis aspects of the response.
A day, and we had the contract with them. But then after
the Joint Information Centre is the one place in the command centre which can provide coordinated, up-to-date information about the nature and status of the response operation, subject to approval to other team members, media representatives and the general public. The overall management of the response is the responsibility of the Unified Command, which brings together representatives of 3 parties. Federal authorities represented by the United States Coast Guard, state authorities, and the responsible party, represented by the incident commander. The Unified Command provides the basis for joint decision-making at the highest level, which is essential for an effective response. The Unified Command is kept small to make decision-making easier. It is supported by a team which will manage all communication with the ship, as well as outside agencies and the media. The FOSC rep has arrived on the ship to provide a direct link to the Unified Command.
Well, we just had a collision with the barge Ocean 400, so he's there on the port side, fellow there. He's collided at number 1 water barge.
The Coast Guard is the only organisation with a legal right to be on board. Other organisations may seek to gain access to the ship to offer their advice to the master, but no one should be allowed on board without permission from the owner. On deck, the situation has stabilised. The crew has acted promptly to keep further spillage to a minimum. But there is little that they can do about the oil already in the water, except monitor its movement. However, there are indications that there may be more than one tank leaking.
We are proposing to lighter from this tank and force center and slops, bringing the vessel up so that the damaged area is just above waterline and we can stop the leak.
Trying out the ship's facilities for damage assessment and emergency lightering is one of the drill's specific objectives.
Yes, we calculated that 6,000 barrels from each tank should...
As long as the incident is being handled properly, the Coast Guard will restrict themselves to monitoring and approving the clean-up, as well as doing whatever they can to assist.
The management team who will then check with the ABS.
Lightering the cargo from the tanks nearest to the damage area seems a good idea to both the master and the Coast Guard.
Stability is fine. It's above the IMO minimum.
The barge involved in the collision is relatively undamaged and can be used for the lightering. However, before going ahead, they will seek advice about the safety of this operation.
Management team and tell them that...
An internal cargo transfer could also have been considered, but there would have been more chance of the operation going wrong. For instance, if it turned out that more tanks than previously thought were ruptured, there might not be enough space in slack tanks to accommodate the amount of oil needed. As well as this, an internal transfer would not have reduced the vessel draft and allowed damage areas to rise above the waterline.
That we intend to light
the officer handling communications brings the Unified Command up to date.
Damaged area.
At the command centre, it is decided to obtain accurate stability information from the team at head office in New York.
You want to transfer 12,000 barrels?
Here they have access to rapid damage stability data services. This will allow them to confirm that transferring cargo won't cause further damage to the ship or bring about more spillage.
1 center and 4 center to the barge. We got to check.
Providing this engineering expertise is just one example of the key support role played by the head office team. They link up with the Classification Society for stability calculations.
Okay.
This computerized service already has all the ship's data and can provide advice rapidly.
ABS.
On the ship, the emergency lightering equipment is made ready while the stability calculations are being made. The engine room is informed. They already have the inert gas system operational.
Yes, Chief Engineer speaking.
However, it may be worth considering lowering the pressure in any tank which has been breached to minimize the amount of oil reaching the sea. All the same, the O2 content should be monitored to ensure an inert atmosphere is maintained.
Just talked with the captain. And
The Coast Guard rep talks to the Federal On-Scene Coordinator at the command centre. The Unified Command does not stay in constant session, but may meet separately with the section chiefs depending on circumstances.
It's kind of the rocky area.
Here, the lightering plan is being discussed.
To that point, the operation, the skimming operation.
On the ship, the precise amount of oil lost has been calculated and is relayed to the bridge. Under this kind of intense pressure, the master will need to rely on his officers and crew.
Oil from one center and about 2,000 barrels have gone here.
The engineering department are now preparing the cargo pumps. They are also keeping a close watch on the inert gas pressure and O2 content.
Maybe not starting this now because not mixing it. Okay?
Have we heard from the ABS?
Yes, we just got a reply from ABS.
At head office, the damage stability calculations confirm that the proposed lightering will pose no increased risk to the hull or cargo.
How long will it take to lighter? Apparently 3 to 4 hours. What we'll do.
The Unified Command is immediately informed.
Kenny Rogers, the Emergency Response Manager. We've just received permission from the ABS to commence lightering.
It assembles to confirm that the action proposed is in the best interests of all parties. The Unified Command provides a top-level forum for producing a cohesive plan of action agreed by all participants. Here, formal agreement is given for the lightering which has already been discussed informally in meetings outside. The Federal On-Scene Coordinator gives the decision to go ahead, and the ship is informed.
Could you please inform the captain to commence lightering immediately?
All decisions, actions and communications must be logged on the ship.
Tides running in. Excuse me, sir? Yes, sir.
These records are useful during an incident and invaluable afterwards. Charts with any notes or plots, as well as cargo arrangements and other relevant paperwork must all be kept.
Yeah, Chief Mayor, the QI informs it's okay for us to transfer from one center and 4 centers.
The master is on scene and knows the ship. But unless he has serious concerns for safety, he will follow the advice he receives from the command center.
Let me know when you're ready to go. Thank you.
The liabilities involved in any pollution incident are so huge now that it is impossible for one individual to call the shots.
Yes, we should be starting transfer operations in the next 5 minutes or so.
The experts and authorities ashore make suggestions and recommendations.
Yes, we are notifying...
They also need to approve any major operation, such as transferring cargo or moving the ship.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Things may change quickly in any incident, and the Unified Command must be kept up to date with the situation.
Send it down to the mate and tell him you're sending it down so he can complete it before starting the transfer. Yeah? Yeah, and sec, can you fill those out, please?
The master should stay on the bridge and follow the communications plan. Otherwise, he risks becoming the communications bottleneck for the entire operation.
We've notified the government agencies. We've established the response priority.
If the responsible party accepts responsibility for the spill and the clean-up, the Coast Guard will integrate themselves into the company system. They will make sure that the response is appropriate to the NCP, properly known as the National Oil and Hazardous Substances Pollution Contingency Plan, and in the best interests of all parties. They will only take over if they are asked to, or if they think things are getting out of control.
Looks like we've covered everything in the checklist. I think we've met all our objectives for this drill. I'm going to contact the captain of the port and request permission to secure for the drill.
Roger, sir.
On the ship, the exercise objectives have been achieved. The FOSC rep calls the captain of the port.
Yes, sir. This is Petty Officer Mao.
Good afternoon, Petty Officer Mao.
We've met all our objectives for this drill. We request permission to secure.
Permission is granted to secure from the drill. I'll inform the Unified Command that the drill is secured. Very good.
Thank you.
The captain of the port agrees that the exercise should be concluded.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please?
The master thanks everyone and stands them down.
Is now complete.
The Unified Command at the command centre and the team at head office are notified and thanked.
Very much.
In a real incident involving shoreline cleanup, it is possible that these organisations would need to stay operational for several months.
Are you happy with the notifications?
With the exercise completed, there are formal debriefings both on the ship and on shore. There will be no point in the exercise if no lessons were learned. Most oil spills are small. But any size of incident can have devastating consequences, including very high costs of cleaning up any spill. The International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, commonly known as MARPOL, applies worldwide. However, in US waters, spills are governed by the Oil Pollution Act of 1990, known as OPA 90. Its primary purpose is to help prevent oil pollution. Under OPA 90, the responsibility for any cleanup lies not with government, but with the organisation which spilt the oil. OPA 90 dictates that even if a spill may be regarded as an accident, it is still considered a crime. Either can lead to criminal prosecutions of both organisations and individuals.
Kenny Rogers, the Emergency Response Manager.
The OPA 90 Vessel Response Plan, or VRP, will be consistent with the ship's MARPOL SOPEP, with additional information on certain shore-based organisations and individuals. OPA 90 dictates the frequency and type of drills to test the ship's VRP and shore-based response. Some are self-evaluated and self-certified. Others will involve shore-based organisations and individuals.
Good afternoon, Captain Venture.
The overall management of the response is the responsibility of the Unified Command, which brings together representatives of three parties. Federal authorities, represented by the United States Coast Guard, state authorities, and the responsible party, the organisation which is taking responsibility for the spill, represented by the incident commander. OPA 90 is designed to achieve three things: to help with the prevention of oil spills,
we have an oil spill on our starboard quarter,
to make sure ships have the right level of preparedness for any incident, and to make sure that the response of all parties involved is timely, proportionate, and as effective as it's possible to achieve.
Good for all sorts of things in the future, and it's something that
For the personnel on board ship, responding to an oil spill under OPA 90 may appear complex. But exercises like these should be as familiar as lifeboat drills to those on board vessels operating in US waters. Oil spills can have serious consequences for the environment, the ship's owners and operators, the cargo owner, and the seafarer. Make sure you understand your role in your ship's vessel response plan. Be sure to read the workbook that accompanies this video and watch it again for reference. There is no substitute for good training, and the exercise program associated with OPA 90 ensures that when things do go wrong, everyone on board will know exactly what to do.